words still echo in my mind. You're nothing without my son. He can do so much better. Susan's voice had been ice cold, her smile razor sharp as she delivered what she thought would be my final humiliation. I just laughed and walked away. Now, 3 months later, that same woman calls me 10 times a day, sobbing and begging me to take back her broke, miserable son. Brett and I met in 2021 during one of those perfect autumn afternoons. We were at a coffee shop when I accidentally bumped his table, spilling sugar packets everywhere. The way he looked up from his laptop felt like something out of a movie. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. After a year, we moved in together. The first crack appeared when Brett introduced me to his parents. Walt seemed pleasant enough, but Susan was different. She studied me like a scientist examining a disappointing specimen. Throughout dinner, she peppered me with questions about my background, my family connections, my pedigree, all while wearing a tight smile that never reached her calculating eyes. When I mentioned my dad worked construction and my mom was a school aide, Susan's expression soured so quickly it was almost comical. Just protective, Brett explained later. She comes from a family that values certain connections, but I don't care about that stuff. Love makes you believe things that aren't true. When Brett proposed last year, I was over the moon. We planned a medium-sized wedding, nothing extravagant since we were saving for a house. Simple, beautiful, ours. That's when Susan struck. At first, her involvement seemed helpful. She had vendor connections, offered to coordinate details. But she wasn't helping. She was staging a hostile takeover. The venue I loved, too shabby for our family's standards. The catering I wanted, not proper food. My dream dress, a bit cheap looking, don't you think, dear? Each compromise I made to keep the peace felt like death by 1,000 cuts. The real turning point came during dinner at their house 4 months before the wedding. Susan had invited her friends Rita and Angela over, and I realized I was being paraded for approval. They exchanged pointed glances whenever I spoke. "Where did you summer as a child?" Rita asked, voice dripping with curiosity. I laughed, thinking she was joking. When I explained my family's idea of vacation was camping at state parks, the table went silent. After dinner, Susan cornered me in the kitchen. She started with casual conversation about Brett's ex-girlfriend, Melissa, some society princess with Hampton connections. "Brett's always been destined for great things," Susan said, honey sweet but sharp. "I hope you won't hold him back?" I felt slapped. "What do you mean?" The mask came off completely. "While you seem nice enough, you aren't from the right background to help Brett's future. Your lack of refinement will embarrass him in important circles. You won't know how to entertain properly." I was speechless. When I finally called her rude, she laughed, this condescending trill that made my skin crawl. "Your defensiveness proves my point. Brett deserves someone who can match his potential, not drag him down." I walked out shaking and told Brett everything. I expected outrage, anger on my behalf. Instead, he got terrifyingly quiet. "She didn't mean it like that," he said finally. "Maybe you misunderstood her tone?" That was our first major fight. Then he admitted something chilling. His mother had been expressing concerns about our compatibility for months. She'd been filling his head with doubts, and he'd been listening. Over 2 weeks, Brett became a stranger, distant, cold. He started questioning things that had never been problems before. Would our different backgrounds cause issues raising kids? Would I fit at his company events? Susan invited us for another dinner to clear the air. Brett begged me to go, saying she wanted to apologize. Like an idiot, I believed him. There was no apology. Susan spent the evening making backhanded comments about everything. My clothes, my manners, even how I spoke. When Brett stepped outside for a call, she leaned across the table. "You are nothing without my son," she hissed. "He can do so much better. Walk away before you ruin his life with your ordinariness." When I started crying, she rolled her eyes. "Your emotional behavior proves my point about your composure." When Brett returned, I was gathering my things. Susan told him I'd overreacted to gentle wedding advice. In the car, I gave Brett an ultimatum: cut contact with his mother until she respected me, or the wedding was off. He chose his mother. "Maybe she's right," he said, not looking at me. "Maybe we are rushing things. Maybe we do come from different worlds." I took off my ring and placed it on the dashboard. Drop me at Angela's. He didn't try to stop me. The next day, I packed my life into boxes and left. I blocked Susan immediately but kept Brett unblocked, hoping he'd come to his senses. He texted days later about being confused and needing time to think. I told him there was nothing to think about. Either he was willing to build a life based on love and respect, or he wasn't. His response? Maybe we should take a break until after my work project. 3 years together, and he couldn't properly break up with me. I told him not to contact me again. I threw myself into rebuilding. New apartment, focus on work, even started dating Matt, a genuinely kind man who couldn't care less about social connections. 3 months later, I ran into Brett's brother Nick at the grocery store. He apologized for his mother's behavior, then mentioned awkwardly, "Things aren't going great for Brett." Through uncomfortable encounters with Susan's gossipy friends, I heard whispers about Brett's spectacular downfall. The work project he'd prioritized over our relationship, complete failure. He'd been fired for poor performance. Then Susan's phone call started. Her voice was shaky, desperate, nothing like the cold woman I remembered. She admitted she'd been terrible, that she'd misjudged me, that she regretted driving me away. But here's the kicker. She thought I could help Brett recover because I was such a stabilizing influence. The woman who'd called me worthless now decided I was exactly what her son needed. Against better judgment, I met her for coffee. The Susan across from me was a shadow of her former self. Tired, desperate, minimal makeup. She laid out Brett's complete downfall. Job loss, depleted savings, bad investments, maxed credit cards. He was living in his childhood bedroom, barely applying for jobs. "He was at his best with you," she kept saying. "You were so good at motivating him." Suddenly, I was steady instead of boring, responsible instead of unambitious. The calls became daily, updates on his father threatening to cut him off, job openings he might qualify for, even mentions of wanting to make amends with my parents. When she showed up at my workplace with Brett's resume, begging me to put in a good word, I'd had enough. She broke down crying in the parking lot, mortifying. Finally, Brett texted a long apology for his mother's behavior and how things ended. He admitted he'd made a huge mistake listening to her instead of standing up for us. Reading his message, I felt nothing. No flutter of feelings, no satisfaction, just tiredness and closure. I responded on my terms. I forgave him because holding anger wasn't helping anyone. But I made clear we had no future. I'd moved on, and he needed to do the same. I suggested professional help and told him to stop letting his mother fight his battles. Then I blocked both their numbers. But Susan found other ways. Instagram accounts, new emails, handwritten letters, each contact more desperate than the last. The final straw came when they appeared at my door. Brett looked disheveled, clearly drunk, with Susan hovering anxiously behind him. Standing there with Matt beside me, looking at these broken people who'd once made me feel small, I realized I felt nothing but pity. Brett actually turned to his mother saying this was exactly why he hadn't wanted to come, that he'd told her this would make things worse. He apologized, not for the breakup, but for never protecting me from her. I haven't heard from them since. Nick texted once about taking Brett to Gamblers Anonymous. I thanked him, but didn't ask for updates. Matt and I are planning a weekend trip. I've changed my email and alerted my workplace about unwanted visitors. The woman who told me I was nothing without her son now begs for my help to save him. The man who chose his mother's approval over our love lives in his childhood bedroom, drowning in debt and regret. And me, I'm thriving in ways I never imagined when I was planning a wedding to the wrong person. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so beautiful that the people who tried to destroy you can only watch from the sidelines, realizing too late what they lost.